Eastern BCP Planning Committee. Before we go on to the agenda, I'll ask the Democratic Services Officer to give us the housekeeping notices and the apologies and news of substitute members on the committee.
Thank you. So just to note that this meeting is being recorded by the Council for live broadcast and will be published on the website for a minimum of 6 months. The meeting may also be recorded or streamed for live or subsequent broadcast by members of the public, although ultimate discretion in this matter lies with the Chair. For those in the room, please note if the fire alarm sounds, please exit the building by way of the nearest available signed fire exit route and make your way to the assembly point at the War Memorial in the Gardens. Finally, please ensure background noise is kept to a minimum. Mobile phones and other devices are turned off or switched to silent for the duration of the meeting. For those in the room, this includes turning off microphones and the volume down completely on your laptops. Thank you.
Thank you.
So apologies have been received from Councillor Joe Clements, Councillor David Flagg, Councillor Paul Hilliard, Councillor Gillian Martin, Councillor Dr Felicity Rice, Councillor Toby Slade, Councillor Michael Tarling and Councillor Lawrence Williams. Substitute members here today, we have Councillor Cameron Adams for Councillor Slade, Councillor Patrick Canavan is here for Councillor Martin, Councillor Brian Hitchcock is here for Councillor Rice, and Councillor Tony Trent is here for Councillor Clements.
Thank you. Thank you. Now I'll ask everybody present in the committee's part of the room to introduce themselves. So I'll start. My name is Marion Lepedvin. I'm Vice Chair of the Eastern Planning Committee, but in the absence of the Chair, I'm chairing today's meeting. So then we move on round the other members of the committee. Starting on my left, hopefully.
Oh, yeah. No, Joe Salmon, Moordown Ward.
Patrick Canavan, Boscombe West.
Cameron Adams, Councillor for Kinton.
Brian Hitchcock for Hamworthy.
Matt Gillett, Talbot Woods.
Tony Trent, Old Newbourne Valley.
Thank you. And then council officers present, several, as you can see.
Yeah, Peter Walters, Senior Planning Officer and Case Officer on two of these being presented today.
Thank you.
Katie Harrington, I'm Development Management Manager of the West Team, Jobs Observing today.
Sanjay Timana, Team Leader, Strategic Applications.
Tom Hubbard, Team Leader, Development Management.
Jill Hollyoak-Clark.
Thank you. And welcome to our new officer. Nice to meet you. So now we move on. Are there any declarations of interest from members? We can always come back to that as we progress through the agenda. If you suddenly think of something, you can say it at that point. But at the moment, no declarations of interest. Item 4, confirmation of minutes. Is everybody happy that the minutes of the meeting on the 23rd of January are an accurate report? Everybody happy? Yes? Good. Thank you. So they're agreed. And now we come on to the schedule of planning applications. After the officer presentation, we'll hear any public speakers who've registered to speak, followed by any ward councillors, and then it will be over to the committee. Can I just remind everybody that this is a meeting in public. It is not a public meeting, so the only people who are not members of the committee and officers who will be able to speak are people who have already registered. And we have the list. We know who you are. We'll know to call you and ask you to speak at the appropriate time. Okay, so we move on to item 6A, which is Hengist Caravan Park, Wick Lane. Over to the case officer.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. The application I'm presenting this morning is in relation to engineering works to infill the existing residential caravan park.
I'm not travelling with, I'm sure, I'm not telling you.
Okay, Jill, can I move this? Yeah. Is that clearer?
Yes.
Fantastic. No, thank you. I'll start again. So this is an application at the Hengist Caravan Park on Wick Lane, for engineering works to infill the existing residential caravan park and stabilise the surrounding banks. Application reference 7/2024 951 AG. So for context, the site is at the bottom end of Wick Lane before it becomes a pedestrianised route through near St Catherine's School, and here is the site and location plan for you. I've got a few photographs. These were taken a few months ago, just to give a kind of an overview of the site. So as you can see, the site was a formal gravel pit, which is why we have escarpments on the southern and western sides, and in fact the eastern, which isn't shown on these photos. And as you can see, just beyond those escarpments are residential properties. The site has an area of 0.9 hectares and previously has had residential caravans on. It has an extant planning permission for use as a residential caravan site, but at the time the photographs have been taken, the caravans have been removed from the site. A few more photographs, again just demonstrating the difference in land levels. So these are the neighbouring properties which are set some 3 metres above the existing level, above the ground level in the caravan park, and you can see the escarpment which identifies, as you can see, the history as a gravel pit. Again, just a few more photographs really illustrating the same. As you can see, there's quite pronounced changes in ground levels across the site. There are areas where the land levels are not flat within the site, as well as having the embankments on the edge of the site. So the proposal is for engineering works to stabilise these embankments, and the way that would be achieved would be a combination of cut and fill from the existing embankments and then also importing fill from other sites. Just want to be really clear about what this application is not. It does not have any bearing on the use of the site, which has an existing planning permission as a caravan site. Nor would this result in intensification of that use. The caravan site, alongside all other caravan sites, has a site licence, and that site licence restricts the number of caravans that can be placed on the site, and that is done by density in this instance. So the density here is up to 50 caravans per hectare, and given that the site area is 0.9 hectares, that equates to a maximum of 49 units for this site. That is true of the site as exists now, and this application would not change that. I've shown you an indicative layout. I believe this is what the applicant is intending to do with the layout of the caravan site, but again, because it's a caravan site, the permission exists for the use of the site and not the layout of the caravans, so this is indicative and can't be considered to be a permanent layout, but it is useful to give you some context and will make more sense in the upcoming sections as well. So I've got some proposed sections here. I will use my pointer at this point because there's quite a lot of detail here. So to run you through, you've got existing residential properties and their gardens, and then you come into the site, and where you can see the red area, that is the parts of the embankment that would be cut out, and the green represents the new land levels. So you can see at the moment it drops away quite substantially, and the idea is to have a more gradual decrease in the land levels instead of a more severe drop. And you can see that when you get, so we're looking at section 8A, so we're looking south to north. When you get to the northern end, the land levels are at the point where the existing land levels are. So effectively, by the time you get to northern end, the land levels are the same as they are now. A few more just to illustrate this. You can see the caravans are being placed in accordance with that indicative layout, which, as I said, is what I believe the applicant intends to do with the site for now, but doesn't mean this planning permission would not restrict them to only placing the caravans here, but this is what they're looking to do at this point in time. What we would be granting permission for is the change in these land levels. So you can see here it illustrates quite well how there are different changes in the land levels from the old gravel pit. What we would do effectively is have a much more level land level across the site. And just a few more again illustrating much the same here. Highway safety has been considered as part of this application. There have been a number of comments about the highway safety on this site. The fallback that has to be considered with this application is that the applicants don't need any permission to go and station new caravans on the site. They can do that at any given time. They can also, within the parameters of the site licence, lay down concrete pads, lay down access roads. All of that is contained within the site licence, and that constitutes permitted development within the confines of the site licence. So there's an awful lot that can happen without any involvement of planning. For the proposed infill, the existing vehicular access will be used, which comes down Wick Lane. I've tried to identify the route here on using green arrows. Apologies if it's not that clear, but it comes down Wick Lane, and then the access point is in the north eastern part of the site, leading into the site, and that is the existing access. Our highways team have been consulted. They suggested a construction management plan would be appropriate, which has been provided, and the highways team have suggested a condition to ensure that that construction management plan is followed. Moving on to neighbouring amenity, as I showed you before with these site levels, the land level in which the caravans are going to be stationed will actually reduce. So the caravan levels will be lower than the existing neighbouring properties. The 1968 Caravan Sites Act restricts the internal height of caravans to no more than 3.05 metres. So that puts a restriction on how tall they can go. And you can see that shown on here that actually the caravan will be set at this point, this particular caravan will be set a metre below the ground level of the neighbouring property. And you've got boundary treatment in between. So in terms of privacy, officers are not concerned. In terms of separation distances, there's a decent amount of separation with the gardens of the existing neighbouring properties between the properties and the caravans. And so officers are satisfied that the caravans would not be overbearing on the neighbouring properties. I refer you to the addendum sheet. The environmental health team have flagged that because some of these caravans, because the engineering works would go close to neighbouring boundaries, they consider it appropriate for a scheme to reduce noise and vibrations to be provided, and that must be implemented, but they're satisfied that that can be dealt with by planning condition, and that is on the addendum sheet as an additional proposed condition. In terms of the impact on the character and appearance of the area, the land levels across the site in some parts will effectively increase, because where you at the moment have the land levels that are completely flat and then it goes up steeply, what you're going to have is a gentle slope. So it is true to say that the land levels increase. However, as shown in those sectional drawings, the land levels are still below the height of the existing ground levels around. So you still have the caravans set down in the site. So officers don't consider there's going to be any impact in terms of wider views. In terms of local views, I added this little Google image from 2011 where you can see this is before any of the caravans were removed, and you can see on here that some of the caravans are actually stationed quite significantly higher. These will be lower as part of the proposal. So officers are satisfied that we're not going to end up with a situation where there's going to be any greater harm, and in fact officers consider it's likely to reduce the visual impact of the caravan site. Biodiversity net gain, like all applications that are registered now, with the odd exemption, the application needs to provide biodiversity net gain of at least 10%. The nature of this proposal means that where we would normally look for the developer to maintain as many habitats as is possible on the site, because this engineering works and you're clearing the land, that's clearly not going to be possible to do, with the exception of the hedgerows that are on the boundary, which will be retained. Excuse me. So we've worked with the applicant. They're going to replace as much habitat on the site as possible, and then they will need to purchase biodiversity units for the rest of the lost habitats, and then the additional 10%. And in terms of the biodiversity net gain hierarchy, we are satisfied as officers that they've done what they can to provide as many habitats as possible on site, and then the rest will have to be provided by units, which follows the hierarchy of the biodiversity net gain. The council's biodiversity team have advised that the proposal will create significant habitats because of the volume of habitats that have to be created, and therefore a Section 106 legal agreement would be required to make to ensure that we have monitoring fees to monitor the habitats for the next 30 years, which is in line with the biodiversity net gain legislation. And so to conclude, just to reiterate that the proposal that we're considering today relates to engineering works. It makes no alterations to the site licence, so therefore the intensity of use isn't changing. The number of caravans that can be sited doesn't change. Officers are satisfied in terms of highway safety, the impact on neighbours and the impact on the character of the area, and therefore the officer's recommendation is that the application is granted subject to the signing of the Section 106 agreement to secure these monitoring fees for the new habitats, or refuse if that Section 106 agreement is not signed by the applicant, and the reason for refusal at that point would be the failure to provide adequate biodiversity net gain. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Now we come on to the registered speakers. First of all, we have Martin Giles, who wishes to object to this application.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Giles, you have up to 5 minutes to address us.
Thank you very much. May I first of all say thank you for the opportunity of coming along today. I am a little bit perplexed in as much as this committee meeting is regarding the infill. I'm not sure most of you are aware, but virtually it's all finished. So it's slightly a fait accompli. But the reason for my visit is not so much that we don't want to see this happen. The residents want to see this happen. But in doing so, I need to give you a little potted history about this site. Myself, my neighbour has lived on this Wick Lane at the bottom, where you only saw the one picture. As you could see, a single little lane track. 33 years ago, this planning consent was granted for the caravan site before that, back in the 60s. But that site had 4 entrances and exits. One by the school in the top of Wick Lane, which was an access road at that time, all the way through, and not a footpath, which it currently is and has been for 30 plus years. This site had a property in Thornbury Road. Thornbury Road is a 2-lane road with pavements on both sides. It had an entrance through Roscrea Drive. This is a 2-lane road with pavements on both sides. This site had on it a lot of caravans, and the owner who lived in Thornbury Road subsequently sold the site, sold off some of the land where up to about 15 to 20 properties were built. This meant that the site was no longer active as a caravan site. We moved in 20 years ago, and my neighbour, as I said, was been there 33 years. The reality is Wick Lane entrance was only ever used by service vehicles for the bin men and service vehicles. It's a tiny, narrow lane. Its highest use possible is for the children who go to the school at the top of the walk-through lane. There are no pavements, as you saw in the photo. We have hundreds of people every day walking through the village, past our property, onto the site. When we moved in, we were involved, I've been involved in charity work for many, many years. And I became involved in a couple of the elderly people on that site, of which there were 15 to 20 people on the site 20 years ago. There were there was probably 20 to 22 caravans on the site, most of them smashed and derelict. We got involved because a couple of the people were ill and old. On that site at that time were 6 vehicles who came in and out via the entrance they now propose for 29 vehicles, 29 units, which probably will entail 50 to 60 vehicles. Now, the reality of that is, however you look at it, it seems insanely wrong that a site with planning permission that was donkey years ago had 4 sites, entrances and exits. They now propose to use only one, which is totally unsafe for purpose, due to the fact that every single day, even this week, which is half term, and I'm sure some of your committee members have children, they are going up that lane all the time to the school, and it is just downright stupid to say that they should have only access and exit via a single lane. Now, to compound that, we went to a meeting with the developers on site about 6-8 weeks ago, and the developer looked at me and I said, how are you going to bring this 600 lorry loads in? And his actual words, and I have witnesses, he said, oh, we have permitted development to go over the ransom strip at the top of Osprey Drive and bring the lorries in that way. Well, the next thing we knew, the lorries are passing our house. We were not asked or notified. They just carried on, and we've had something like 400 to 500 32-ton trucks. Now, this instantly caused mayhem. Children going to school, they promised they wouldn't go in school hours. They did. So in the end, the developer then had banksmen walking the lorries, walking every lorry in and out of the site for safety reasons. When this site's developed, they won't be there. We're going to have 60 people moving onto a site, probably very few local, mainly probably retirees from London, and they're going to be living on this site with not 6 cars, there'll be probably 50 to 60 cars on this site. It's absolutely insane. We have never known access. We have never known the dangers we're seeing currently every day. They promised banks...
Mr. Giles, could I point out that you've already had your 5 minutes? So if you could wind up very, very soon, please.
Yes, I will. I apologise. All I'd like to say is this slope that goes up to the school, and I'll finish on this, this slope is down towards our home. It runs from the school down. Cyclists come herring down it, kids come herring down it, and this site entrance is set back off the road. I took the developer to it, and he genuinely couldn't see round the corner without any vehicle being halfway across the lane. We want the site, we want it to
Sorry, I must ask you to finish now. I think you've made your point very clearly.
No,
Thank you.
Fine. I'll say no more. Thank you very much for your time.
And now I call John Brotherton on behalf of the applicant to come and talk to us.
Madam Chair, members.
Can I just say the same thing to you? You have 5 minutes maximum to address us.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Less would be great.
Yes, members of the Planning Committee, good morning. I'm John Brotherton of Brotherton Park Design, and as a chartered civil engineer, I've been acting as the agent for the applicant for this planning application. As such, I have been advising them of the most appropriate and least disruptive method to address the bank conditions they inherited when they acquired the site from the previous owners. As Mr. Walters has very well and thoroughly pointed out, the site has a long-established permitted use as a caravan park stemming from 1948. The caravan park was there before any of the surrounding residential properties were developed. As far as we can tell, prior to the site being cleared of caravans from their last use, there were 41 on there, and you can get that from a Google Earth image. And as Mr. Walters points out, on the density principle of 50 per hectare, the site could take 49 caravans. The current layout, which Mr. Walters displayed, has only 29 caravans proposed. I would like to stress, however, that this planning application is for the engineering works to implement the preferred solution to deal with the ugly, steep and potentially unstable banks around the perimeter and bounding the residential gardens. If the banks had been left as they were, their dubious stability would most definitely have required substantial retaining walls of typically concrete or stone or brick construction to be introduced between 3 to 4 metres high, which would be a huge civil engineering undertaking and result in a totally inappropriate and unsympathetic appearance to the site. The necessary engineering works associated with these walls would have resulted in a very long-term civil engineering project with significant disruption, disturbance, noise and vibration. Therefore, the much more subtle and elegant approach in engineering terms is our recommendation to introduce suitable fill material to reprofile the site with gentle slopes, replacing the steep banks. This solution is also much quicker and softer, which we feel responds to the concerns of the local residents, and Councillor Nanova, with whom we were pleased to discuss the details of the scheme at a recent meeting on site, which was the one the gentleman referred to just then. I was present at that meeting. Filling of the site to produce the more sensitive appearance also enables us to leave the levels around the higher areas lower than they might have been, as illustrated by Mr. Walters, with a concrete, there would have been with a concrete wall solution. We could have just put the walls up and the caravans could have been just at their original level. We're dropping the caravans down lower, much lower than some of them were previously, and retaining a visual separation and avoiding overlooking issues that might otherwise have arisen. This was another concern from the local residents, which we listened to and heard. There have been recent concerns suggesting that the work has started on the site prior to consent being granted. Just to be clear, if I may, work has started on the area of the site which is already benefiting from existing planning permissions, and the works form normal construction. Such works are not depending upon the fill being introduced. The Council's enforcement and environmental health officers are satisfied that the works fall within the confines of the existing consents. I've listened to the concerns about the entrance, and I said at the meeting with the local residents that we would address the existing entrance, which is the only entrance we can use, because all the other ones have been historically closed off for many, many years. There is no right of access from Rosscrea Drive. It has to be all along Wick Lane, which is mainly a highway, an adopted highway with a private section. And we've offered to introduce traffic calming at the exit to make sure that cars do slow down on exit and do what we can with the Highway Authority to improve the visibility at the exit, as it would be on exiting the site. We wholly endorse Mr. Walters' recommendations, and we kindly request that planning permission is resolved to be granted, subject to the successful conclusion of a Section 106 agreement. We've worked hard to resolve any outstanding issues with the officers, so whilst we would have wanted to avoid any pre-commencement conditions, we've accepted those relating to biodiversity net gain and surface water drainage details. This will enable our client to complete the works as quickly as possible in accordance with the Construction Environmental Management Plan, the KEMP, and reduce any potential impacts going forward. I would note that the contractor has already applied the KEMP to existing construction activities carried out under the extant planning permissions. That KEMP has been applied to in full, and the feedback received is that the approach has been welcomed by many of the local residents.
Mr. Brotherton, can I point out you've had your 5 minutes?
Thank you. I'm just wrapping up now. Thank you.
Very quickly.
The applicant is also willing to accept the requirement to set out the regards to providing a contribution towards the ongoing BNG monitoring to ensure that there are local nature benefits to the scheme, along with resolving rapidly destabilising banks and provide a long-term solution to the issue whilst delivering homes on site. We would kindly request that the committee grant planning permission in accordance with the officer's recommendations. My planning colleague Nayan Gandhi of Leicester Planning and I are here to answer any questions which may arise if you require any clarifications. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Brotherton. And now the ward councillor, Councillor Bernadette Nanovo.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair. I am Councillor Bernadette Nanovo, and I represent East Southbourne and Tuckton Ward, where Hengistbury Caravan Park is based. This has been a contentious planning application because our residents were concerned about road safety and the number of lorries that would be used to bring in this infill. As we have heard from Mr. Giles, a lot of lorries have been used to date to carry out permitted works, and the traffic management plan put in place by the developer has worked well. The banksmen escorting the lorries on the last leg of the journey through the narrowest part of Wick Lane really helped, and many residents have told me that they were happy with this solution. I think most residents would agree at this stage that they would like the infill to be done and the site to be completed, but they are still concerned about future road safety at the entrance to the development, due to its proximity to St. Catherine's School and the number of pedestrians, many of whom are children, and cyclists that use the lane that runs along by the caravan park. Residents have asked that the Planning Committee, through an S106 agreement, request future traffic calming measures to make the exit and the development safer than it currently is. However, we have been told previously that this is outside the scope of this planning application. Therefore, I've spoken to the applicants who have assured me that the entrance to the site will be improved and that they will be working with highways to increase visibility for drivers exiting the site in future. We also feel that it's important to improve lighting in this area. Surface water drainage and increasing the flood risk in this area was another concern, and I am pleased that the planning officer's report states that it is appropriate to impose a planning condition to ensure that the proposed development does not result in an increase in surface water runoff, causing the risk of flooding elsewhere. Visitor parking is an issue, and the biodiversity net gain, which is unlikely to benefit the local area, as credits will be purchased for use elsewhere. But I believe that the rules around B&G do not come under the control of this planning committee. The issues around noise and vibration that some residents have been experiencing have been dealt with in the officer's report, in that Environmental Health have recommended that a condition is applied requiring noise and vibration monitoring during the construction works. Residents will welcome this and will appreciate that they are being listened to. Thank you for your time today, and I trust that this application will be fully scrutinised and approved subject to conditions, so that residents living close to this development can move on with their lives. I would also like to thank the planning officer for doing such a thorough job and addressing all the concerns raised. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nanova. And now we move on to committee debate. But first of all, we're opening it up for questions about the presentation, about the representations we've heard, questions for clarity and fact, rather than at this stage of expressing any opinions. That we'll come on to that later. Councillor Adams.
Sorry, I'd just be interested to hear the officer's the officer's response to the road safety issues mentioned, and whether they do indeed fall outside the scope of the application, or what can be done to mitigate it.
Mr. Walters or anyone?
For you, Chair, I know Alexis Edwards from the Highways team is also on this call. If you'd like me to bring him in at this point.
That would be useful. Yes, please.
Good morning, Chair. Alexis Edwards, Transport Development Manager. So Wick Lane is a 20-mile-an-hour road. It is relatively quiet. The section that we're particularly interested in today is single carriageway from approximately the pumping station at 119 Wick Lane. It's certainly looking at the application here for the engineering works. The bit that the residents and yourselves are most concerned with is the actual activity of the vehicles moving the material onto site. The applicant has provided a construction management plan to address concerns about road safety from pedestrians, school children, etc. at that narrow point of Wick Lane. The use of banksmen would alleviate concerns of the Highway Authority from having large construction vehicles in this area. And from what you've heard this morning, it appears to be working quite well in practice. In terms of the actual application, because it is related to the engineering works, the Highway Authority is unable to ask for any further improvements to the site access or to Wick Lane itself, because that would be disproportionate to what they're actually undertaking.
Thank you very much, Mr. Edwards. Anything further to add from anybody else on that issue? Thank you. Any other questions from members of the committee? Okay, well, we'll
sorry, I'm just very slow off the mark. So there's a condition about the biodiversity, but I must be being a bit thick. When I read the stuff about the flooding, I thought there was something about a condition to meet the flooding standards, and I'm unclear if that's already been kind of drawn up, what that condition would be. Does that not make any sense? Because it says refuse unless there's this condition for the biodiversity, but it doesn't say refuse unless there's this condition for the biodiversity and the flooding. So does the existing application already tick all the boxes on flooding?
I think it's to do with the section 106, isn't it?
Yeah, if I may provide some clarity. So there is a condition required which the lead local flood authority recommended in relation to surface water drainage. The site itself isn't within in any of the flood risk zones, and so that's not material here, but clearly changing the land levels has the potential to increase surface water runoff, and so there is a condition requiring a drainage scheme to make sure that that doesn't happen, and our lead local flood authority have advised that that is sufficient to address that. What I'm referring to with the biodiversity net gain, so there is the standard biodiversity net gain condition that has to be applied, which is pre-commencement. There is also a landscape and ecological management condition that has to be applied. However, in certain instances where the ecologist considers significant habitats are being created, we have to ensure that those habitats are maintained for a period of 30 years. There's a cost involved with doing that, and so in order to, the developer has to cover those costs, and the way to do that is through a Section 106 legal agreement. So the legal agreement relates solely to the applicant providing the relevant fees that have been calculated by biodiversity, our ecologists, to provide monitoring for the habitats for the coming 30 years, which is what the legislation requires us to do. Everything else is covered by planning condition, which is included either in the original officer report or on the addendum sheet, and that includes drainage.
Thank you. Councillor Canavan.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just trying to clarify the situation about road safety. From what was just said, the suggestion is that because this is just an application in respect of the engineering works, that the kind of road safety issues is outside of the scope of this application. So the question if that's right, if I've understood that correctly, in the situation when that work has been completed, the caravan's put back on the site, given that I understand from what you said that there is a pre-existing planning permission for those caravans, I'm just wondering if there is any point at which the issue about exits and entrances from that site can be looked at again, or whether we are, whether we are fixed now to just having that one entrance, one exit that's been referred to, if that makes any sense.
I think it does to me, yes.
Thank you. So the planning application relates to the engineering works solely. The point with this scheme is because of the existing planning permission, there is a legitimate fallback that they could do none of this work, go on site now and station up to 49 caravans. And what the applicant is proposing to do, which is outside the scope of this planning application, but just for background, is they're proposing twin units, which are the larger mobile homes, if you like, which still fall within the definition of a caravan as set out in the 1968 Caravans Act. And so because they're doing that, they're only proposing 29. What they could do legitimately within that planning permission, the site licence, is go to single units, what I'd call kind of, if you think of a static caravan, what you might think of as a static caravan, the narrower units. And they could place up to 49, and we would have no control over that. So the position that we're in is that's legitimate fallback of which we could do absolutely nothing about within the scope of this planning application. So we have to limit the highways impacts to the impacts as a result of the engineering works. And therefore, that's why we're saying the construction management plan relates to the construction period and not beyond, because that's identifying harm or an impact that could be caused by this planning application.
Okay. Yes, do.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's also important to remember the 6 tests of planning conditions and other necessary contributions and things like that we attach to a planning permission. And the 6 tests of planning condition are necessary, relevant to planning, relevant to the development to be permitted, enforceable, precise, and reasonable in all other aspects. Because of the nature and scale of development proposed here, officers consider securing a new access by a condition or highways contributions through various Section 278 or Section 38 highways works goes beyond it's not relevant for the development to be permitted, the scale of the development that we are considering. Does it make sense? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Gillett.
But within the context of that, if we were to say, okay, so the lorries can't go up the road, but during school, 1 hour either side of the school opening, that'd be okay, though, wouldn't it?
So they have already submitted, the applicants have provided a construction environment management plan document, and paragraph 2.2 of the SEMP document actually tells us the hours of work, which is the standard hours of work we normally permit for any development. It's morning 8 to 5:30 in the afternoon, Monday to Friday, and then again 8 to 1 on Saturday. And that's been reviewed by the highways officers and considered acceptable. So I'm not sure, Alexis, would you like to probably provide some clarification on these hours of work? Thank you.
Yes, the hours of work are the typical sort of hours of work you would expect someone to be undertaking activity here. I unfortunately I don't have the document in front of me, so I can't give you those hours. I'm sure Peter will have it to hand, however.
Can you help us on this?
Yeah, just as Sanjuti had said, 8:30 to you've got in front of you, haven't you? Yeah, 8 till 5:30. Sorry, Monday to Friday, and 8 to 1 on Saturday.
Thank you. I'm just looking through the conditions, and I can't actually see it in writing in the conditions that we have in front of us. But I may have missed it. Yeah.
Condition 3 requires the implementation of the construction method statements. So we haven't repeated those hours within the condition because the expectation of the condition is that all of the details set out in the method statement, which includes the hours of operation, will be complied with.
Okay, thank you. So, any more questions? If not, we'll go on to debate. Right, Councillor Hitchcock.
How are they gaining access to the site at the moment with the lorries?
I think I could answer that because I've seen it through the entrance. Yeah, I mean, that's the only entrance, and they must be. I mean, I haven't seen it because I was there on Sunday afternoon, but clearly that must be where they're going in. But I'd probably better have professional
So have they not
verdict on
cleared a
this.
decent path for the trucks to get in? Surely that would have pushed all the hedgerows back because they're
Sorry?
not small, are they? I said for them to get the trucks in and out of that site, clearly it must be fairly wide.
Sorry, I've done the non-professional verdicts.
Yeah, no, that's the access that they're using, and they've made the relevant space.
Okay, now we move on to debate. Remember, we're only looking at the application for the engineering works to deal with the ground level, the level that the caravans will be stationed on. Councillor Salmon.
So I thought the gentleman in the green jumper spoke very well and made a lot of salient points. And I think, all due respect to officers, I think everybody does work very hard and whatnot. But I think, given how stretched resources are and how unsafe our roads are in general, I would have concerns. You know, if I had children who were walking or cycling to school from my home using any of the roads affected by this development, it would worry me that this committee approved this application. And I'm sure all of us have had issues in our own wards with developers who do stuff that they're not meant to do, you know, and there's meant to be enforcement and all of that, and actually there is none. You know, the resources and the legal framework isn't there. But we're not on this committee to make common sense decisions, as I'm so often reminded. If we do something sensible, doesn't matter how sensible it is, it's not justified by all the Byzantine planning stuff. The application just gets approved anyway at appeal, and the council just has to whack up council tax even more because we get another great big stonking bill. I can't see any reason to refuse this application as long as the biodiversity condition is met. I propose that we approve it, you know, with that condition, unless there's any dissent.
Thank you. Have we got a seconder for that motion? Oh, looks like, I think I saw Councillor Adams marginally first, but Councillor Hitchcock also had his hand up, so...
I think I won. Oh, I'll second that one.
I don't
Final
actually
agreement.
sense any reason or any desire for debate on this, so shall we move straight to the vote? So if you wish to see this application approved with the conditions as stated and with the proviso that if the 106 is not signed, it will be automatically refused by officers. So it's approved on condition that the 106 is signed. Do you wish to add anything?
I just wanted to clarify that are you granting permission for the officers to approve it under delegated power? So head of planning to approve it under delegated power, subject to the conditions. That's the recommendation, not just...
Whatever the recommendation, whatever the recommendation is in here. Yes,
Thank you.
we're approving the recommendation.
Thanks.
Yeah. So,
yeah. Sorry, can I just clarify that? There is a recommendation in the report to grant. So it's...
yeah.
And with the additional conditions in the addendum, is that
Yeah,
correct?
yes.
Lovely.
So if you wish to grant this application, please vote now. If you wish.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's unanimous.
So that's unanimous. So no. Nobody voting against and nobody abstaining. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. And we move on now to 6B, which is 156 River Way. So I'll leave a couple of minutes for those who wish to leave to do so now. So now we've got 156 River Way. This has been brought to us because it was called in by Councillor Phipps quite a while ago. But she has now stated that she wants to withdraw her call in and allow the application to be dealt with under delegated powers. We have one speaker here with us today to speak on behalf of the applicant. Are you happy if we withdraw this from the agenda and leave it to the officers? Could you come to the mic so that it's public?
Yes, we're very happy with that scenario.
Okay, so I now formally put it to the vote of the committee. Right, and a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Hitchcock. You've got to get off the mark a bit quicker. So we've had the motion proposed and seconded that we refer this back under delegated powers. If you wish to vote for that to happen, please do so now.
Okay, that is 6.
And if you wish not to delegate, 1.
Okay, so
and
is that okay? That's thank you.
And no abstentions, therefore, on the numbers. So thank you very much. Sorry you've had a wasted morning. We move on to item 6C, which is Royal Arcade, Christchurch Road, Bournemouth, which some of us will remember coming to committee not so very long ago, but this is for some amendments and changes. So I hand over to the case officer who's online, Dr. Kulik, and he's ready and waiting. Well, I saw him just now. He's on hold at the moment, it says. Ah, here he is. Good morning. Can we hand over to you for your report now, please?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, hopefully you can hear me. So.
You're very quiet.
Oh, that's really strange. Okay, what I'm gonna do maybe.
Can you move the microphone nearer? Or
is it better?
Oh, that's much better. Yes, that's lovely.
Yeah, it must be something with my headphones. So anyway.
No, that's fine.
Yeah. Okay. Presentation. You see that?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. So as noted already, we're taking this application back to committee because of some changes within this permission, which solely relates to additional condition, because we cannot add highway contributions into a legal agreement, which will be discussed further in a minute. So the application site itself consists of the Royal Arcade, which is Grade 2 listed building, which is surrounded by other historical buildings and is located within central Boscombe district location, within Boscombe central shopping area as well. There are 2 entrances to the site, one from Christchurch Road, the other one from Palmerston Road. The application site itself, as noted already, is a Grade 2 listed building. It consists of mainly commercial, the existing use is mainly commercial uses on ground floor level, and there are vacant mix of residential commercial spaces above the ground floor level. The application itself was granted permission for a complex refurbishment box to bring back this building to a mix of commercial and residential spaces on on upper floor levels, and obviously the application itself consisted of different refurbishment works to the external fabrics of the building, which also been included within the listed building consent granted back in August 2024. And on this slide, you can see the existing and approved uses on site. So that's another slide showing a kind of 3D model of what's been approved. So just to clarify it, so the principle of the refurbishment box the impact on the local setting, neighbours, a highway, etc., being already granted by members. So this application is exactly the same approval, but which consists of revision, which will basically remove the approved section 106 highway contribution, which included contribution of £840 to introduce 3 external cycle spaces. The local authority, which is the applicant and developer itself, for this application cannot enter into a legal agreement because the landowner refused to enter into such legal agreement. Therefore, it's been the application been consulted internally with the local highway authority, and it's been agreed that we can actually introduce alternative mechanisms through grant and condition, which will basically ask to provide pre-number Sheffield type cycle stands externally within close proximity to the site, instead of asking for that through a legal agreement. So just to summarize, the principle of the complex refurbishment works to the site being ready approved by members back in August 2024, and this application solely relates to additional planning condition, which will include requirement of a free number of external cycle parking spaces, instead of asking for such provision through a legal agreement. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Kulik. So we have no speakers registered, so we go straight on to questions from members. Councillor Adams.
I worry. I've caught Joe Salmon's worry of slowness. So is this literally just we're changing the way we condition putting 3 bike stands up?
As I understand it, yes.
All right, let's get on with it then. I'm happy to propose it.
Hang on, we haven't got to prepare. We are supposed to be asking questions. If there are no questions, then we can move on to your proposal. Councillor Trent.
Yeah, is 3 cycle stands adequate for what would be quite a few offices?
More than.
Yeah, that's actually in line with the previous highway recommendations. So there was obviously deficit of pre-number cycle spaces, which being asked, and we were asked to provide them externally. So it's exactly the same principle, exactly the same agreement through local highway authority consultation, which basically we just asking for exactly the same thing, but through planning condition instead of highway contribution under section 106 legal agreement.
Thank you. So any further questions? Otherwise we have... Oh, Councillor Canavan.
Chair, this is my ward. So are you saying that the only reason that we're doing this is because of objection from the landowner who's recently put this property on the market for sale?
I'm not saying this is through objection. It's more to do during the when we try to seal the legal agreement. So obviously there was a separate consultation with our officers, our legal department, with the site owner. As far as I'm aware, the site owner, I'm not sure for what reason, but actually refused to sign the legal agreement, which included this clause, asking for separate cycle stores. So we decided the same mechanism could be introduced through a planning condition. But I'm not sure what's the reason. I cannot agree that what was the reason behind it, but we just basically couldn't finish the legal agreement.
Thank you. So any more questions? Otherwise we move on to debate. Well, we've already had a motion, so we've got to say, Councillor Hitchcock. You're seconding the motion that we approve this. Okay. So let's put it straight to the vote. Those who agree we should approve it, vote now.
That's unanimous.
Unanimous. Thank you very much, everybody. And so we move on rapidly to the 4th item on the agenda, 6D, which is 44 Minton Road.
It's just on our way.
interested.
Oh, I think she was on screen. The case officer is actually coming in person. I think we've caught her out because we finished quicker than she expected. So she will be with us in a minute. So there will be a slight gap, a slight break. So if we take a 5-minute comfort break, for those.
Right. Okay.
So we're now back in session for the last item on the agenda, which is 44 Minton Road, Christchurch, and I'll hand over to the case officer, presenting officer, who is Charlotte Haynes, to present the case.
Thank you, Chair. So this is a householder application for alterations and extensions to the existing single-storey bungalow at 44 Minton Road. This application actually follows a previously approved application for the redevelopment of the property, which involved the erection of a single-storey wrap around rear side extension and the raising of the roof over the existing bungalow to provide an upper storey accommodation with the provision of a side box dormer. The main difference with this scheme, with this application, is the erection of a two-storey side extension as opposed to a single-storey side extension and side box dormer. Amended plans were submitted during the course of the application to introduce a small hipped element to the flat roof two-storey extension closest to the boundary with the neighbour to the north at number 46. Let's click to the next one. This application site comprises a detached chalet bungalow set within Minton Road, a cul-de-sac comprising of various chalet style and single-storey bungalows. The map shows the wider area of Stanpit, which you can see is a large residential area of various cul-de-sacs and roads. You can see in the middle there Minton Road. There's the aerial photo showing the application property in relation to the neighbouring properties there. This is the proposed block plan. This is actually the same as the block plan that was approved under the previous scheme, because the footprint of the extensions proposed are the same. The key difference is, as I said before, the two-storey side extension, and then also raising the roof height slightly from what was approved, which you'll see in the next slides. So this is the proposed site plan, again showing bit more detail. This also shows the enlarged bungalow in relation to the site boundaries, and as you can see there, also the neighbouring properties on either side. Also demarcates the windows at number 46. It's worth pointing out there. Okay, here are the existing floor plans showing the existing single-storey bungalow with the detached garage. This is proposed to be demolished, as was the case in the previously approved scheme, to allow for the single-storey rear extension, effectively, at this point. Okay. That's the proposed floor plans. You can see that more clearly there with the garage to be demolished, demarcated in the dashed blue line. And you can see also the changes at the first floor, which is somewhat different to the approved scheme. We'll go on to a comparison on the next slide, on a later slide. This shows that there'll be 3 bedrooms at first floor, and that's and that's it. The existing elevations here showing it as a single-storey bungalow, and the proposed elevations, which show what's now proposed. Effectively, you can see the blue dash line shows the existing single-storey bungalow. The purple dash line is the approved enlarged bungalow. You can see clearly the change, the slight increase in eaves and ridge height that I referred to, and also you can see the difference there with the two-storey side extension and the single-storey dashed in that purple dashed line there as approved. And there's the main difference there, which is this. This is a vertical, you can see that better on the side elevation, a vertical plane effectively, and then obviously there's the hipped element that's been introduced through the application. It's considered that the application, the proposed two-storey extension is not subservient to the enlarged chalet bungalow, as opposed to what was approved with the single storey. It's introducing that large flat roof plane there effectively, along with this sort of increased eaves height and ridge height, and the vertical shaped windows that it will be significantly larger. You'll see that better in the comparison slide that I'll go on to effectively. So, there we go. So here are some 3D views. This probably better illustrates the other concern that we have, which relates to the impact it will have on the neighbouring property to the north at number 46, northeast. And this, you can see the 3D views illustrate the key difference here, which is obviously the two-storey side extension. You can see better there on that 3D view, the flat roof and the hitch element coming down. So it does lower down, but it still is of a significant height, and you can see it casts a shadow over this elevation here where there are windows along this elevation that serve habitable rooms. This is the proposed street scene, and this shows the enlarged bungalow in relation to the bungalows on either side. You'll see that number 40 is already a chalet style bungalow, as is number 48, but this one will be notably taller, and I think with the two-storey side extension you can see it has a more two-storey scale. Here's the slide I was referring to before, which is the comparison with the approved schemes. You'll see on the top we have the approved elevations, and at the bottom there is the proposed elevations for what's now proposed effectively. You'll see that the rear extension looks broadly the same, and you've got the Juliet rear elevation balcony, very similar to what was approved on the southwest elevation. And then this is the two-storey extension here, which is a different part. You can see that again on the front side as well. And then the back there is another Juliet balcony, I believe. So you can see also that that has a lower, obviously it's not to scale, but a lower eaves and ridge height. So you can see that there, but it's sort of much clearer here, the sort of more chalet style, more horizontal appearance, shall we say, and this is a bit more of a vertical appearance with those windows and the two-storey flat roof extension there at the side. I've done another comparison which shows the side elevations. So showing the key difference, we see the dormer on the approved west elevation is now to be replaced with a two-storey side extension, as said. As you can see here, that's the hitch element is this part, coming down to the eaves here. And I'll go to that. Right, so this is the aerial photo that just better shows its position. The existing property is at an angle, so it's actually angles in closer to number 40 and away from 45. There's a gap here at the moment with the garage and the driveway, which the proposed extension will look to infill and be within 0.6 metres of the boundary here. This is the street scene site photos, showing how it is in the road at the moment. You can see this is number 46, and over here is number 40, the chalet bungalow. And this is properties opposite, again, chalet bungalows. This is the Google Street View, looking down the road. You can see the application property there in relation to the bungalows. Some site photos, these are from within the site. You can see standing here in that driveway that I showed in the aerial photos, standing in front of the garage, effectively looking down to the road. You can see the side elevation with the windows that I referred to in the previous slide. These are obscure glazed, but they do serve habitable rooms and provide light due to their south-facing aspect. And that's, sorry, that's the end of that. End of my slideshow. So as I said, so the main concerns I've alluded to previously in the presentation relate to the impact that the proposed two-storey extension will have on the character and appearance of the enlarged property, and that it's not subservient. It will have a more two-storey appearance, which is inconsistent with the character of the road, where you have much more single-storey or chalet-style bungalows that are a lot more horizontal and much lower in height. The other concern is the impact on the neighbour to the north, where they have their habitable windows serving habitable rooms, and the significant loss of light, daylight and sunlight into these rooms due to the increased height of that two-storey side extension and its close proximity to those windows. Okay. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We only have one speaker registered, and that's Jeremy Isaacs, who's going to speak on behalf of the applicant.
Good morning, committee.
Again, you have 5 minutes maximum.
Thank you. Good morning. Interesting, we're here with this application because my client, the applicant, is an employee of the council. So obviously it's fitting and protocol that it should be here today. So the application, as we've seen, thanks Charlotte for the drawings, seeks additional accommodation above the approved single-storey side extension. So the house is one of the smallest on Minturn Road and needs extension to provide a sustainable home with space for a family with growing children. There are no uniform separation distances within the street scene gap between the dwellings, which vary from as little as 1 metre or less than 1 metre in fact. The character of the surrounding area is evolving. Now recently extended properties have been in a very contemporary style with flat roofs and 2-storey side extensions. In particular, Victoria Road, the 2 images on the bottom left and the centre image. The recent approvals shown here should be enough to confirm that the scale, massing and appearance of our proposal aligns with the other recent approvals in the area. The crux of the application is the accommodation above the garage, similar to nearby homes, as I said, 12 and 14 Victoria Road. The planning officer stated that the proposals would contrast significantly with surrounding development. These images show why we disagree with this. The side extension is not incongruous, it's subservient, being set back 5 metres from the front elevation of the house. The side extension is also only half the width of the original house. The proposed side extension would not be incongruous within the surrounding area. This is clearly shown by the comparison of approvals within 50 metres of the application site, seen here. Slide 2, please. Okay, yeah, so again here at the bottom we can see other nearby approvals which are obviously in the same character of our proposals with flat roof 2-storey side extensions. Slide 3 please. Okay, so in the response to the objection from the neighbour at number 46, we've amended the side extension to feature a half-hipped gable to reduce the height of the side extension. The proposed 2-storey extension would be located 1.55 metres from the side elevation of number 46. This is more generous compared to other nearby extended properties. The 6-foot fence on the boundary is located 70 centimetres from the neighbour's frosted windows. Now generally, if the glass is obscured, I'm sure you'll agree there's limited use as a principal habitable room because the outlook is restricted. You can't see out of the room. Number 46 has 3 windows located here. 2 of them are obscured windows and serve an office and an open plan dining area. The third is a high level window within the rear extension. Having examined the approved plans, we can see that the first window nearest the road is the only original window serving the office. The overshadowing impact on this window wouldn't be significantly higher than that carrying from the existing house and boundary fence. The second obscured window is a full height panel installed in 2021 and serves the dining room, which is accessed through the new extension via double doors. The dining room is not a principal habitable room and benefits from borrowed light from the new extension. We feel that it's unfair that our proposed extension is curtailed due to the neighbour's addition of unneighbourly side windows. Due to the neighbour's windows facing southeast, they will still receive some direct sunlight over the driveway in the morning and above the single-storey rear extension later in the day. It's useful to note that any right to light claim is a separate matter of civil law and would only apply to windows if they have existed for more than 20 years. So slide 4, please. So here are approved schemes for 2-storey side extensions with very similar relationships to neighbouring side windows serving other habitable rooms. There are at least 10 properties within the immediate area which have been granted permission for these side extensions, which caused objections on similar grounds, yet these applications were approved. Specifically, the relationship between number 1882 Lingwood Avenue and 94 and 92 Pauntley Road, which can be seen here. These are the same orientation with two-storey side extensions featuring smaller distances to the habitable rooms windows. In both cases, they serve dining rooms. In all of these similar applications have been approved, some of them with neighbour objections. So why should this application be treated differently? So in conclusion, slide 5, please. We acknowledge that each application is judged on its own merits, but we must be aware of recent comparable approvals nearby. In conclusion, the extension would provide a high-quality, sustainable home for a family with growing children. It responds to the surrounding context, and we believe it does not cause adverse impacts on neighbours' living conditions to the degree that would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits of sustainable development. The positive impact to provide an adequate family home would outweigh perceived impacts on the neighbour, which are perhaps beyond the scope of normal planning considerations. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Isaacs. I was quite kind and let you run on a bit over your 5 minutes.
I had one more sentence. Sorry, I missed that.
No, I think you need to stop now because you have had a lot more than your 5 minutes.
I had to wait for the slides, just
every time the slide
only because it's a very important point, which is quite interesting. While council employees should obviously not receive any special treatment, I ask simply that the committee use their best judgment to ensure my client is not unfairly over-scrutinised by planning procedure when compared to others nearby. Thank you very much.
So we move on to questions, and I'd like to set the ball rolling. Charlotte, I don't know whether you can bring up the picture that had lots of different houses in the area that have been extended.
Yes, which slide? Which slide, Chair?
It had lots of little pictures of houses in the area.
Right, okay.
This one, yes. This is
one.
no.
That one?
That one.
Yes, I just
That's the one.
shot it there.
Okay, I'm looking at the ones on the bottom left, the ones in Victoria Road, and the extensions there, and Pauntley Road for that matter, the next one after it. The extensions all appear to be much lower than the eaves height, whereas the application appears to be almost on a level with the ridge. Is that just an angle of the photos, or is that in fact the case that the extension is the top of the extension is lower than the ridge of the principal property?
I'd have to measure it.
I would have to measure the elevations, which I haven't got at the moment. It does appear that the eaves height is lower from what it looks like, but obviously we're looking at it, like you say, at an angle and not to scale and so forth. And again, we're looking at these slides here where they're not to scale of the proposed elevation.
The plans you're showing us now make it look as though the top of the extension is not very far below the ridge height of the principal property.
Right,
but
yes.
the pictures of the ones in Victoria Road appeared to be quite a bit lower.
Go back to which one? Sorry.
Is it possible to respond to that?
No.
No, I'm afraid not.
Yeah. This one. Here we go. Yes. Yeah. There we go. Okay. So that shows.
Yeah. So again, on there,
you can see on the bottom there the 12 Victoria Road and 14 Victoria Road. In relation, obviously, to what you can see above, which is obviously the evolution of the proposed to the proposed plans that we have before us now, on that slide.
So clearly, on there, the top of the extension, be it flat roof or gate or pitch, I don't know.
Those extensions are lower.
Yeah, Mr. Hubbard.
Thanks, Chair. Can I just clarify, in terms of this slide, this is material produced by the applicant's agent. These front elevations of these properties, we haven't checked the scale of these as to whether they are accurate. I just want to clarify that. Thank you.
Just looking for clarity on this sort of this 20-year rule on windows, because obviously one of the reason for the recommendation to refuse is on the basis that the significant reduction in light levels entering the habitable rooms in the neighbouring properties. Is there any reason? Is that right? I don't know about this 20-year rule for light.
Can one of you clarify that for us, Mr. Hubbard or Charlotte?
I think the key point here is that the right to light and the 20 years that you're referring to there is a separate legislation, a separate matter. It's not a planning consideration. What we're looking at here is the overshadowing and the impact on that neighbour from overshadowing in relation to policies, planning policy, HE2.
Thank you. Councillor Salmon.
I was just curious because quite frequently I see on applications, the new local plan says bumpty bumpty boo and needs to be weighted as such. This all seems to be based on the 2014 Christchurch plan. How would this application have fared? Do we know if it was stacked up against the incoming neighbourhood plan? Oh, sorry, local plan, not neighbourhood plan.
Mr. Hubbard?
The new local plan doesn't currently hold any significant weight at the moment, but I think forthcoming policies will have the same sort of design principles, good design, neighbour amenity. I don't think that there's any site specific or area specific policies that would change in this case.
Thank you. Any more questions? If not, we'll move on to debate. Okay. Could you resume your seat, please? Huh? So, debate. Councillor.
So I think it's set out here that we've got to refuse this. I can't see any reason to grant it. I'd like to propose that we refuse it in line with the advice we've received.
Thank you. And bear in mind, if it hadn't been brought to us, it would have been refused under delegated powers by the appearances. So, Councillor Trent?
Yeah, I'll second that if that's a proposal.
Yeah, thank you. So we've got a motion proposed and seconded that we agree with the case officer call for refusal.
Yeah. Can I add, I haven't gone through the reasons properly yet, but it does seem to be out of scale with what's there, even in adjacent roads, and I wonder whether that can actually be
It's reason one.
As a.
It's reason one.
It's reason one.
That's reason one,
it is
basically.
quite obviously out of scale.
Right. Okay, well, so we've got a motion proposed and seconded, so we can move straight to the vote. Those who think this application should be refused in line with the case officer report, please vote now.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Those who think it should be approved, and abstention, 1. So thank you, everybody. That completes our agenda for today. So the live stream will be ended and the meeting.